So, hi everyone. I want to welcome everyone to the Emergence Artist Talks featuring our Hera members. Tonight we will be hearing from, I think, three artist members. Um, that would be Molly Kaderka, Elizabeth O'Connor, and myself, Marisa Squire. Um, this exhibition opened. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. I should be sharing my screen. Let me do that really quick. Okay, can everyone see? Perfect. Okay, this exhibition opened September 6th, and it will be open until October 3rd, which is a Friday. Afterwards, we have on October 4th, we have our full moon party. So if anyone's interested, please join us. So this exhibition features our artist members. We'll only be hearing from a couple tonight, and then we will save all of our questions until afterwards. And then I just quickly want to thank our sponsors and Riska for all their help and making sure that we can continue to do what we do. So, as I said before, my name is Marisa Squire. I am the outgoing director. Tonight we are actually joined with our new director, Caitlin. If you want to say a little hello.
Hello, everybody. I'm Caitlin. I'm filling in the role for the new gallery director here at Hera. I'm very excited to meet everybody and to take on this position. I'm very grateful to be under the training of our lovely Marissa. She's been helping me out at the gallery and helping me out. So this is my first artist talk, my first virtual artist talk as well. So I'm very grateful to be here and hear all what you guys have to say about your works and future events at Hera. But I've just been hanging out at the gallery this week and the past week and just sitting in the gallery, and I've seen all your works in unison in the Emergence show, and it's just great to see it all put together, and I'm really proud and happy for you guys. So excited to hear about your work and excited to start at Hera. So hello and congrats. I'm excited for this artist talk. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Caitlin. All right, so we will just start it off with Molly.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Molly. Thanks for coming and being here to listen to what we have to say about our art. Um, I guess a little bit about my practice, sort of generally speaking, is I think about my work as a way of reinterpreting traditional landscape painting. So if we think about a traditional landscape painting, normally you have like a square picture frame. You're going to have horizontal horizon line, and both the land and the sky are going to kind of recede away from you, the viewer, to a kind of illusory vanishing point where the sky and ground meet. But that, of course, again, is an illusion. So I think in my work, I try to like take that format of the landscape and rethink it, abstract it, distort it. In a lot of my work, some of which you can see behind me, I'm in the middle of installation right now. Um, I try to make the landscape into more of a circular composition, especially when I'm making work that has to do with kind of the grand landscape. If we look back at the history of kind of Western landscape, there's a lot of like there's almost a kind of proprietary gaze on the land. It's like, what can we get from this? Where can I go to explore, conquer, inhabit, things like that. And I'm interested in trying to show an image of the landscape in a way that doesn't have those connotations or tries to at least bypass some of that. So that's really where I find like the kind of reformatting of it into this sort of circular composition to be really, I guess, urgent or at least like relevant at this time. Um, so things that I'm trying to do with that, I think I'm trying to create a sense of like awe and reverence for the natural world. A lot of times I'm trying to replicate certain textures of the ground or stone with different printmaking processes or marbling processes to give a kind of texture or sense of familiarity with the land that like sort of recalls it without trying to reproduce it exactly. So that's really what's kind of going on in these big works behind me. The works that are in the show are a lot of the little pieces that I do that where I'm kind of experimenting and where I'm trying out a lot of new things. I can't just make one of these like massive things without a bunch of experiments and tests to start with. And these little pieces are really my like testing ground for what eventually becomes much larger. So I think of them, while they are paintings, they function in my practice almost like drawings. There's a lot of like playfulness for me. There's a lot of experimentation. Um, and I'm really happy to be able to like show these because they're not something that I often get to like really put a spotlight on because they are especially their size are just so much smaller than what I'm sort of normally doing. Um, a little bit about the technique. So all of the things that are in the show are Ebru marbled. So Ebru marbling is a Turkish form of paper marbling which is usually used for more like decorative objects or like the end papers of books or sometimes book covers. And I got really into marbling during the pandemic. I used to do a lot of printmaking, but during COVID, you couldn't access the print shops or anything. So I started like looking for ways of representing stone and land and ground textures without needing to like physically draw it. And I kind of stumbled upon marbling and just like really got into it, went down the rabbit hole, started marbling in my bathtub, all the fun things we all did during COVID. And it's really become over time a really central part to my practice. And all of these little works have like kind of different experiments in them. So this piece here that's on the screen, all of those little ridges, which kind of mimic the sedimentary uh, lines of the ground being compacted over time, is actually created by how you drape a piece of paper over a marbling bath. If you kind of like dip it or rock it back and forth really quickly, it can give you this like little stridation and this almost like wave-like pattern. And so I used that and collaged that together in order to make this sort of inverted landscape where the land is actually on on the top portion. The sky is underneath. Maybe we can go to another little piece. This piece and then the work that has like two hands kind of coming together. This one, this is a sort of ongoing experiment that I'm like desperately trying to figure out. There's a way that people used to marble. So they would marble one sheet of paper, and then they would figure out like a way of masking the marbled paper with a type of paint that you could paint over the sheet of paper, marble it a second time, and then when you would pull it up, you could rinse off the masking layer and have just like two distinct images together. And that's what I was trying. That's what I did here. I got it to work like kind of twice, but it's still something that I'm like continuing to try to figure out and replicate a couple of times. But in terms of the imagery, I think I'm also really interested in how are how like the how humans interact with and interpret nature and sort of where we show up in that imagery as well, not just as the viewer, but within the actual picture plane. And I think I try to do that in a way where the image of the person or the hint of the figure is is like built into the land. It's not just like stamped on top of it. Again, like the kind of like conqueror or main character energy that I think is kind of poisonous and has led to a lot of problems currently. But rather a sort of a part of the landscape and an ephemeral part at that. I think we as people, our lifetimes are short, especially given, the vast spans of time that the earth is here. So I like that to think of our place in the land as very transient, although we are now certainly a part of it in the kind of Anthropocene. So we are definitely have made a mark, but I like to think of it as maybe a smaller mark than we would again, I would hope that it's a small part in the end. Um, so that's where this piece is kind of coming from, and then the other piece that has a kind of figurative image in it as well. And the thing I also like about marbling and thinking about like how rock and stone can also like take on a kind of bodily quality. So I think that's part of what was I was trying to do here. So on the left, I was trying to think about this kind of sedimentary rock that make it more vertical. So you have this kind of striations, but they also have this like really rich red color in them. So they also look like the fiber of muscle and all of these like stones here that are kind of coming out. This is called like a pebble pattern. But those patterns also kind of take on a kind of cellular quality. So it's like playing a little bit with the visually with like just the texture that it is both rocky and stone-like, but also very human and flesh-like in a kind of uncanny way. And I think that's mostly what I got. I'm happy to take questions at the end here, but I think I'll hand the mic back.
Thank you so much, Molly. Okay, now we will hear from Elizabeth.
Oh, we put my statement on there. Thank you. I'm going to read the statement. I'll leave it on there. But I'm going to read it too. You guys hear me okay?
Yeah. Yes.
This was the first time I was able to do, before I read the statement, a project, a body of work that was cohesive for my photography. Usually I'm just wherever the spirit moves me, whatever I'm finding out in the world. But this was a really great opportunity for me to do a cohesive body of work. So that was wonderful. So thank you very much. It was wonderful to be able to do this project. This is called Daylight at Dump Beach. The entrance to Block Island's West Beach is located at the end of the same dirt road that takes you to the island's recycling and trash transfer station. My first trip there was in 2015, and as a landscape photographer, I was thrilled to discover such a beautiful beach. A view of the North Light lighthouse is to the right, and a lovely stretch of beach meanders off to the left and then disappears. The sun sets directly across from the water's edge, and it's a frequent destination to watch the sunset or join a group of friends for a bonfire. But where are the beachgoers on this sunny summer day? 10 years later, West Beach has been significantly cleaned up, but the memory of the harm caused cannot be easily erased by bulldozers and rakes. The walking path to the beach is still littered with shards of glass and metal fragments, which brightly sparkle in the sunlight but also remind you that walking barefoot is not an option. It feels like an intentional barrier placed by inhabitants stuck in a place they call home by no fault of their own. There's still a story to tell. This collection of photographs was brought into the physical memory through curiosity, imagination, humor, and the recognition of the landscape's desire to be acknowledged for the violation of its natural self. The landscape is firmly declaring, I will not let you forget what happened to me, and I will remain resilient, beautiful, and at peace. Can you show the color ones? Yeah. So these two color ones that you're seeing, these were some of the pictures I took from back in 2015. I used to go there all the time, and I mean, these pictures really represent what it looked like then. And I continued to go back there for, in between the 10 years. And it's just so beautiful. I can't help myself to keep going back. But these pictures are from 2014. The ones they're going to see next are from 2014 and 2015. So only 2 days. So that's, usually I go back a bunch of times, but I just got sometimes all the pictures happen on the same day, and that's just what it is, how it happened. So I just couldn't, the light was beautiful, and I was just looking around, and these figures just started popping out at me. And so this is the collection of what I saw those 2 days. These kind of go in order, and it might not be obvious to people, but it's kind of the most striking or opposing picture or scene to this one here, which is kind of looks like my usual landscape, kind of pretty picture at the end, but it's still called Path to Nowhere. So even though it looks like that, there's still no way out, is what I'm kind of showing there. And can you go back to the one with the arm in it? Just a story about this one. I don't usually go out taking photographs with people. I have a handful that I do that with. Usually I'm out by myself, but I have a friend that I do go out and photograph with, and he he was walking around the beach and looking at things too, and I was shooting this, and all of a sudden he popped his arm in, and I was like, no, I'm taking a picture here. And he so I have a couple pictures of his arm in here, and then one that didn't have the arm, which is what I wanted, and I thought, but in the end this was the one that was the feeling that I wanted. So that's how that one happened. They'll have a story. These are all done. I have a camera that's converted to digital infrared. Had that done about 10 years ago. And I only shoot with that camera. It's just how I see now. And then I bring the photos into Photoshop, and it's a very quick process with me with how I think whatever the photo, it speaks to me. It tells me what it's supposed to look like. But for this project, they all have the same look and feel. That was mostly done because they weren't on the done on the same day. So I wanted them to look similar, have that cohesive look, but I don't usually do that. So that's the other neat thing about being able to do a project. So that was really nice for me to have them look cohesive like that. It was very interesting to see them that way. Let's see. Uh, these are all, I'm usually, when I'm a landscape photographer, and I'm usually shooting in a very precise depth of field where everything is in focus, foreground, background. But for this project, I don't know if you can see them on the screen, I was using a very shallow depth of field and up close, but because I wanted it to look like I was really, you know, in there with them and observing them and looking at them very closely. So even the first picture where the rocks are out of the foreground is very out of focus. That's very unusual for me. But that was a great change or something to explore for this project too. So and I think it lends itself to really putting the focus on what I want you to look at, in the pictures, to focus on the viewer. So that was purposeful that way. Let's see. I can't think of anything else to share about these. Fascinator. Does that look like a fascinator hat to anybody? That's what it's supposed to be. That's what it looked like to me. So, yeah.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
We're supposed to hear from Alexander, but I don't think he made it tonight. So we will move on. Okay. So for my work, I don't have too much to say. For the most part, my stuff is very experimental and just messing around with mediums and just trying new things and textures and things like that. For this piece, my goal was to make him very lonely. It's like I think it's a 20 by 30 canvas, and it's just all alone on the wall by itself to give you a very dramatic feel, because this fish is endangered. Everything in my series is endangered, or it's threatened to be endangered, and I focused on fish and coral. So this was my first time using modeling paste. I enjoyed it very much. I'm someone who enjoys uh, sculptural things, so creating with my hands and stuff. And I think that adding the 3D element to the canvas is something that I want to explore more, and definitely push the limits and see what I can do with it. Um, and also, all of my titles are the scientific name of either the marine organism or the coral species. So these ones, I originally just made two of these in 2022 when I was still in college. And it was honestly just something that came about when I was playing with clay in my hand, just messing around. And I seemed to really like it in the end. I liked that had um it had two ways of displaying it, either laying down or standing. The first originals are the purple one and the small green one laying down. Those are made of ceramic. They also don't have an underbelly. They were hollow, so they were like, the very first editions. I wasn't really sure how to continue, but then in now this year, I went back to them and I tried to workshop the idea and I came up with the concept of creating some more texture on the under half. So I kind of thought about a couple different things. Once again, these are I call them coral creatures, so they're all based off of different coral types. Like the pink one is fan coral, that orange one is brain coral. Um, and yeah, I tried to just mess around with textures and things like that. And I really like the way they came out, and I'm happy with them. Um, and then this piece I created last year after there was an algae, and marine biologists couldn't necessarily figure out what was going on, but it was causing I'm sorry, it was causing marine organisms to spin out of control, specifically this sawtooth um, fish. Uh, so the concept of this one was that they were spinning themselves to death, and they were becoming more and more endangered. As this kept happening, and the scientists couldn't figure out what was going on. So for this piece, I found a frame from Savers and it spins. So there are two prints put in there, and you spin it as fast as you can, and he'll just disappear into the darkness. Um, but yeah, for my series, I tried to use stuff that I had around and try not to buy too many materials and just try to be mindful of just plastic waste, any type of waste in general, because everything we do affects the ocean creatures and life and everything. And our oceans are very important to us as well. So, and that is it. So now we can open up to questions if anyone has any.
I had a question for the group and then a specific question for one of the artists. But Beth, if you don't mind me asking, I'm a little bit unfamiliar with photography as a medium. I think it's probably the one I know the least about. So when you had said that you had added the digital infrared installation to your camera, I've noticed like in the gallery you can really tell that color difference in the sky and those rich kind of dusty dawn like red and then the kind of dark colors like the division between it. And I guess I'm just curious like what is digital red photography? I know you said after you put it into Photoshop. I'm just more curious about that simply because I'd never heard of it, but seeing them in person, the infrared is so striking and beautiful in your work.
Um, yeah, so starting technical, I have a camera. My camera was sent out to a company. I sent it out to Life Pixel. There's a couple companies and they do a physical conversion, where they replace the standard filter with, you can select different types of infrared filters based on how much color you want to bring in. Like some people just have their camera converted to all black and white and they can't have any color. I chose kind of in the middle of the road where I can bring in some visible light. The camera will still capture that, which I like, so I can bring in the color that you see. It can get kind of a little bit more red, but I do have that flexibility, which that I enjoy that. So the reason I did the conversion is because you can just get a R72 infrared filter and put it on whatever lens that you want and try it. I tell people to try that first to see if they like it. That's what I did. But I don't like tripods. So it acts as a like a neutral density filter. So you have to use a tripod a lot to get the steadiness. And so I was like, I'll just, I like it a lot. So I sacrifice my camera for this experiment. And it's the only camera I use from 10 years ago, 16 megapixel. And so with the Photoshop part, I, because it's digital, so I need to use some type of tool. And it looks kind of wild in the camera because I don't really try to do anything with white balancing or how it looks in the camera because I can see it. I can see the picture. I don't need to make it look black and white or anything. So when I bring it into Photoshop, it's usually very bright and colorful. And then I just work in Photoshop and I'm pretty fast in it and see what I like right away. It speaks to me, whatever it is. And when I try to fight it, it doesn't like it. There's all kinds of times I've wanted to make a black and white picture. No, it doesn't want to be that. So I learned over time that whatever I see at the beginning is what it is, and that's just how it is. For my artistic process, that's how that works. And the coloring of how I did these, yeah, kind of the almost sepia, but not quite. And the grass, which is really green, and it still kind of has that coloring. If it was black and white, it would look very white. That's just how the conversion renders it and how my camera does that. And in Photoshop, it just stays that way. So it's, that part of it, I feel like I'm not controlling. I'm just enjoying how I'm able to get it to a look, the look that I really, really enjoy, make it interesting. And so did I answer a question that you asked?
I would say absolutely, yeah, that's very fascinating. I was just curious about the process and how it worked, and it's interesting to see how it all came together. So thank you. Never heard of it before, so I'm glad to see it in action and hear about your process. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Marissa. I have a question. Well, I guess I don't know. Maybe a statement and a question in there. I love the coral painting or 3D piece. I'm not entirely sure how you're calling them. Is this something you're going to continue working on? Are you thinking of doing multiple in this style? Are you thinking about representing the coral in a different way? And what is I think you said it was modeling paste. I'm not sure, but
Mhm.
could you explain that process a little bit more?
Yeah, definitely. So I definitely want to continue working with this medium and modeling pace. I want to push it further, maybe work on a bigger canvas and just try different textures and things. For this one, when I started, it definitely was like a little wonkier, uh, but I slowly got the hang of it. And I was using a palette knife and my fingers, and then I was also using a paintbrush too to um, at first I would use the palette knife to get the modeling paste onto the canvas, kind of in the shape that I wanted. And then from there, I would smooth it out. And then to get like the really smooth texture, I would start using a little bit of water and use my finger and then a little bit of the paintbrush just to get that smoothened. And yeah, I really enjoyed working with it. And I definitely would like to try to incorporate it in like almost all of my paintings now. I think it's a great way for me to be able to add like a little sculptural aspect to my canvases, and I'm excited to work with it.
Yeah, I feel like it really brings your drawings and your sculptures together It has like a nice marriage between the two of them. And it's so, for the choral wise, it's like kind of gross, but like so beautiful at the same time and really shows that living quality. Like this is a living thing that we need to keep alive. There's so much breath to it. So yeah, I think this is great. I'm really excited for you.
Thank you.
Hi, y'all. This is Wendy. It's great to be here and to have had the opportunity to see this show. Molly, in particular, it's so awesome to see you from afar. And as soon as I went into the gallery, I knew before the labels went up, I was like, that's Molly. So thank you for continuing to participate. Um,
Thank you.
and it's, I'm always so impressed by how these diverse artworks come together in a cohesive exhibition when there is a kind of a theme, but everybody's moving at a different pace and place. And it's just always just reassuring to know we're doing the right thing and there's a reason we are here. So in our intimate assembly here, I'm really grateful to um, get to hear what people are doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Wendy.
Yeah, thank you, Wendy. We were actually just saying that right before we started that it's so funny when we're thinking about putting the show together and trying to figure out who's going to put in what. It's like it doesn't like at the beginning, maybe you can't see the connections, then you start to see everyone's work, and it's like all of a sudden it can just click. And there's something like beautifully serendipitous about these group shows. And I feel like that about every Hera show of members that we've had.
Definitely.
To go off that, that kind of reminds me of what I think my second question was going to ask. So, kind of going off of what Wendy said, it's so interesting to see in the gallery space how all the different mediums and all the different messages and stories behind all of your works work in unison. Like, it's very clear that there's so many different mediums and techniques at play here for each individual artist. And then seeing it come all together is very interesting. So, I know how you had just said, Molly, it kind of like you're all working on your separate projects, and then once you're together talking, it sort of clicks. How did you guys, like, how did Emergence emerge? Like, how did you guys settle on that sort of idea and that theme for all of your works together? If any of the artists, like, want to speak on that.
I don't know. I think it's just over, time and, meeting with each other. We kind of talk about our work. And I think after, having discussions and hearing what everyone else is working on, you kind of see similar things in your own work. And I feel like after having the conversations, you can kind of push that. And I don't know, I feel like it slowly just starts coming together because we're communicating with each other. That's just my experience.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we bounced around with a couple different words or so that all sort of like meant the same thing. I think it was just a matter of like finding the one that like clicked it all together.
Definitely.
I wish Alex was here to say a few words about
I know.
his sculpture because it is so different from all of the works in the exhibition, but it feels like it fits so well. It's really interesting, and to not have Marnie be able to talk about her work anymore is not only sad, but disappointing because there's an interesting relationship between all of these works. So, and everybody's at a different place as, emerging and established artists. And I just really love the way it falls together each time. I'm always surprised and delighted. So, Marissa, you may have experiences. I know Sonia, you certainly have, and um, Caitlin, you're about to. It's this, exciting moment when the artworks, all the planning happens, and then the artworks arrive in the gallery, and whether it's the artists themselves, members installing their work, or it's, a juror making the selections and hopefully curating something that where the artworks will speak to one another based on the theme, or and then it arrives at the gallery and the director and the exhibitions work group put it all together and voila, we have magic. So I'm just thrilled every time.
Yeah, definitely magic, that's for sure.
Magic and hard work.
Lots of hard work.
Definitely. Karen, do you have a question?
Yes. Thank you that you artists that are here. It was really lovely to hear each of you share in your own words about your work and your process. And in the salon, it was great to hear you, Elizabeth, talk about that body of work. And it's so exciting to see. And my question, though, is for Molly with regard to scale. I was really fascinated to encounter these pieces at the scale because I saw your work at Jamestown Art Center and it had the similarities to what seems to be behind you scale wise. And I was so blown away by that exhibit and that body of work that it just had such an effect on me. And uh, then when I was applying for Hera, I was so excited to see how much I loved all the artists that were in Hera already. And just to discover you were part of it still, or at all, was really exciting for me. And I also then, when I looked up your work on your website, I was startled to see about your body of work that was figurative and representational and more realism, uh, figure based. And I was just wondering if you could speak to two things. One, your transition from the figurative painting, because you're such an exceptional painter of figurative um, realism, surrealism, and that language. And then how you evolved or what that process was like for you to evolve to non-figurate or a different kind of figurative work with regard to also these forms, this language, and even its relationship to landscape, and then scale. Just what is it like for you to be given a project where you get to be that spatial compared to when you're working in these smaller forms?
Yeah, great. Well, then thank you for those really lovely comments. I'm blushing. So nice to hear. Um, I'll take the first one. So I did start off as a pretty classical oil painter. I think when I was younger and in school, I thought like I wanted to be Titian, who was like a kind of, 1500s painter, figurative, nude ladies everywhere. It's just like, that's the height of painting. That's the artist I want to be. So I just sort of spent a lot of time trying to pursue that and kind of working with oil paint and kind of that language of representation. And I had just like a moment where I realized I was bored with the figure. And I think I was also just like looking both like I felt like my gaze was just always on the past and also sort of inward. And I felt like really unsatisfied with that. And I sort of like just burnt out with it. There was like sort of nothing else for me to do with that. And I was trying to think in that moment where I was like, I'm bored of oil painting. And I don't, but it's like what I've been doing. Like, how do I do anything else? And I was trying to think about like what do I like? Like, what are the things that get me excited other than just like try to like self-reflect and make work about my interior landscape, which I think is so fruitful for so many people. But for me, it was just like very dry. I don't know what that says about me, but it was done. And I realized that like the things I was really fascinated with were more like scientific fields. So I spent a ton of time in in museums looking at like archaeological objects and geological objects. And as I was like just kind of paying attention to the things that drew me, I was also a part of like an astronomy club at this point, just as like a hobby. I sort of started to put the things together that I was like, oh, I'm really interested in things that like come from the land or human made objects that are trying to like map the landscape or keep time and have a like sense of like human positioning within the greater landscape. So it was really at that point I kind of moved away from painting and into drawing. And that drawing period lasted a long time. And I started trying to like I made these like really big, like fields of like ground drawings where I was drawing every little stone and pebble. And I think I liked doing that, but my hand was so obviously there. Like it was like so clearly a human representation and a kind of cartooning of the thing I was trying to mimic. So that's where printmaking came in because it was like, okay, I need something like an indexical mark. I need something that like is between my hand and the paper or the canvas. There has to be some sort of intermediary, and that's really where the sort of like textural stuff, like the Jamestown show, kind of came about that way. And I think while I was in grad school too, it's something that just sort of again serendipitous that happened that really forced me into printmaking was I was on my bike and I got hit by a truck and I broke my shoulder. So I'm right-handed. I literally couldn't draw. So um, the school was able to like give me like a fund so that because I was in a printmaking class at the time. So they were like, well, we can pay other students to like print your work for you so that because I couldn't do anything myself. So that sort of put me in a kind of directorial role in my own studio practice. But because people can't really make your paintings for you, can't really make your drawings for you, it really centered printmaking as something that I could sort of control. And it was like, mostly what I was, thinking of, and that's really where that kind of how that trajectory went. And the stuff on the wall, I mean, that kind of came about through my questioning of like of the picture plane of the painting. It was like that was like the first thing that I had to break in order to like get myself into like landscape painting and kind of rejoining the idea of the the ground plane and the sky in a new format. Because I would always like represent the sky, I'd always represent the ground, but they were always sort of separate like things. I never like put them together until I figured out how to do it on the wall. Um, that's maybe a little long-winded way of how I kind of came out of the painting world. But in terms of the scale, I think like the work, like what's behind me, like usually I don't make that type of work until someone gives me a wall to make it. So I usually have ideas of how I want to do something, but it's very labor intensive and costly to like produce those. So I usually am like, I am waiting until I have like a space and then I kind of make those pieces to fit that specifically. And once they're made, they can really only go on walls that are kind of similar to what I originally made. So like these pieces behind me are about like 14 feet tall and then 22 feet wide. So, they require big space in order to show them. But I am like installing both of them here because they were also originally made for a corner as well. So that's kind of an added benefit. And in terms of like the small work, it's funny when I plan really big installations, I always make like the tiniest doodles of them. Like I'm always like drawing circles and like trying to find the right weight and balance and composition. So I actually start everything like really, really small or like in the margins of like, meeting notes or whatever, it's just like whatever I've got around me. And once I have like the shape of something, I think like I don't, it's like sort of no need to explore that further. But then there's a lot of like testing of colors and patterns and things like that with the marbling. And while that happens, I think there's like all these other like smaller directions that kind of come up. And I think that's really what's in this show here is that there's all these other little experiments that I think are really worthwhile and that eventually are probably going to become something really large, like the little diptych that is kind of in the center there that has like the sun and the night sky together. Um, this is definitely like a prototype for my next really big wall work. Like it's like this color palette, this sort of method of the marbling is something like I'm applying for grants to like produce this, and that's kind of what's next. And it's coming out of these like small little tester sheets that also have like a lot of little like power on their own. Um, as well. And I think if you go to the image of those three that are all right next to one another, I think the piece on the left is something I've been interested in a while, like making something like really large that maybe isn't circular, but like takes up like a like tall rectangular wall and having the idea of like this kind of globular cluster that's represented in the middle, like kind of almost raining down like starlight onto onto the viewer, and that would be like kind of beam of light really really high up that would then sort of have that cascade of light represented showering down. So all of these feel like both like small and big to me. Like in my mind, I can kind of imagine how they scale, but I also just really like the intimacy of them too. Like the marks of marbling are often like done like you can get a lot of variety in these sort of small areas. So I think the small canvases also like really let you focus on the text, like specific parts of the texture that you might lose when you go really really large. And those sort of special moments just kind of fade away because there's just so much of it. I guess that's how I think about the scale.
Well, thank you. That was very rich to listen to, and I'm excited to learn about that process of how you evolved with it. And the small ones are just gorgeous. They're so radiant and jewel-like, and there is a lot of reverence and awe that I
Yeah.
feel. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karen and Molly. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, well, I think that will conclude the rest of our call. Thank you so much for everyone who came. And thank you for
Thank
such
you for
a,
coming, everyone.
yes, and thank you for such a rich question segment.
Thank you. Congrats on a great show. It was nice to, step into this and, see this as my first show as director and just so grateful. And I love seeing your work every day in the gallery. So congrats again. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you,
Everyone.
everybody. This has been really wonderful.
Yeah, thank
Good to
you.
see you all.
Congratulations.
Mhm. Everyone have a good night.
Night.
Thank you.
Bye.